Hey, you, welcome back. It's Jyoti. What's happening? I recently reacted to something from Sham Sharma, and y'all loved it, and y'all were like, oh, um, someone commented saying, Jyoti reacting to Sham Sharma, peak cinema. ऐसा कुछ तो भी comment आया था, and I was like, oh, okay, let's react to more then. And then someone just DM'd me this one because it dropped um, 2 days ago. Yeah, someone DM'd me this one, and then I added it immediately to my list because absolute cinema wala comment mujhe yaad hai. Also, I do know that, I mean, I've followed Sham Sharma's show for a while, and I do know that he's focusing a lot on the global channel, which is primarily English content, which I think is great because he has the means to, uh, reach a lot of people. Since he's based out of the US, he has the audience now, he has the numbers, he has the setup and the team, wherein he can really dispel a lot of crappy myths about India and Indians, which I think now is very, very necessary because when we were growing up, all we ever, I mean, I grew up outside India, so the entire environment was very, like, there was no hate ever. There was just very okay, you know. Indians move to different countries, they assimilate really well, they maintain their culture and identity, and they conform to the laws of the land that they're living in. And they do not live on welfare. They do not, take from the country. In fact, they give back tenfold by becoming model citizens and, being in the high income bracket and um, studying hard. It's like when especially in the US, because when I was studying there, one of my professors, he was the head of the department in and I think he was also my advisor. He was also my advisor. Yeah. I remember his daughter's name, Dhyana, he had named her, but I'm forgetting his name, so my bad. But he was originally from South India, and he was the head of the mechanical engineering department in my uni, and also my personal advisor that I had been assigned to. Yeah, I think he had spent over 15 years in the US by that time. But most of the people who had moved from his generation were all highly intellectual people, and that is the case even today, especially when it comes to H-1Bs. It's not that they are taking jobs of people on ground, it's that they are technically equipped to handle that job role that is required. So back in the day, it wasn't considered uh, they're coming to take our jobs. Back in the day, the mentality was that we want to bring in all the brilliant minds from around the world to come to America and assimilate with our people and our culture and our way of life, and together we build this country and make it amazing, right? And so whether it was the Germans who eventually helped make NASA what it is today, or whether it was Indians who have been part of academia, part of the medical fraternity, part of the lawyers, the accountants, the IT intellectuals, the coding people, the CEOs and CFOs, and you know what I mean. Like, it used to be called the brain drain in India for a reason, because they were draining the intellectuals from our land, and they were relocating and making another country greater. So they've actually like these are well documented ideas and moments in time. So now suddenly there's been an overdrive of the hatred, and it's just ridiculous. It's definitely propaganda driven. And abhi last month only I came across this whole thing. There's a Pakistani guy, and I don't remember his name, obviously funded by the ISI and all of that. This guy runs different Telegram and WhatsApp groups in which he regularly disseminates fake and false information and content, and tells people to regularly, like, even gives them like proper scripted tweets and posts ki, post this, post this, post this, make it. And there was a guy who infiltrated one of these groups, so he was a silent observer, obviously not on their side, but like a spy. He infiltrated the online group, and so this is all released with screenshots and everything. He's literally telling them in one message that make sure that the Indian hatred grows so much that people don't feel guilt at all for killing or murdering an Indian around them. This is literally what is being fed to these people to become your online bots and soldiers to increase the hate. And it's so weird to me because the highest contributors to the economy in any country that Indians settle in are the Indians. and probably the Chinese and Taiwanese and Japanese. Like it is a cultural thing. It is the ethos of the people to just focus on studies, focus on excelling at what they do, focus on being a positively contributing member of society. That's what I've lived through my entire life in the Middle East. That's what I lived through my entire life in and saw in my years spent living in Spain and then in the US. After graduation, I chose to leave the country because I did not want to live in America. I made that choice for myself. And I moved back to Oman and Dubai. But the point is, there was never any of this hatred. Obviously, social media was not around in my early childhood, but irrespective, it was, even person to person, it was so, there was just warmth and coexistence everywhere. So this is definitely a very, very highly funded and planned, industry. And that's why I was very curious to see what Sham Sharma's research is going to show and tell us. It has become $1 billion industry. This I did not know. So TK, I will stop talking now and let's quickly get into it. It's a 19-minute video, so it's not that long. I'll watch it at 1.25. Chalo, 1, 2, 3, play.
Have you noticed a phenomenon on the internet recently? Whenever something happens in India or an Indian does something, there's a strange response to it these days. An Indian wins a chess championship. Suddenly there are comments not about chess but about curry.
But certain lowlifes cannot accept the fact
it's so
that
weird.
An Indian managed to get the better of a European. Gukesh scent was an undebatable trait.
India lands on the moon. Suddenly there are comments not about India's accomplishment but about toilets.
Country that has extreme poverty. I think more than 700 million Indians don't have access to a toilet. Really? Should they really be spending this sort of money on a space program?
The internet currently is saturated with anti-India content. It's become a cottage industry. You have the absolute bottom of the barrel, gutter trash, trying to make a career out of anti-India racism. Pivoting to anti-India racism is a pretty lucrative market right now, especially for whom nobody in their right minds would subscribe to their OnlyFans.
There'll be hundreds of trolls or whoever these accounts are. They will come and say, oh, but you have to say that they do not have toilets. But, oh, you do not have... And the most utter nonsense that is said over there.
CNN News 18 is the first to report about how Pakistan Army and ISI has deployed almost 550 people on social media for Kashmir.
But abroad, for the poor ex-colonies like us, the white man's burden, they're peddling untruths, right, which suits Chinese interests. And they peddle it because they can't get away from this. They peddle it because they are funded by Huawei.
But all this isn't even the worst part of it. The absolute worst part of all of this is that a very large section of people spreading anti-India racism or hatred are Indians themselves.
Heyman, that's actually reasonably true that India did not invade many countries because there was no India in the first place. India is a British creation and Indians are so sheepish that everyone runs over them all the time. In the modern, after the United Nations, just because of international laws, people could no longer run all over India.
A sitting MP of West Bengal's far-left Trinamool Congress party openly endorses anti-Indian hatred. They blame Indians themselves for the barrage of anti-Indian sentiment on social media. Arundhati Roy feels compelled to go all over the world and announce that India is an artificial state. More people have spoken up to help terrorists like Afzal Guru and Yaqub Menon, who facilitated the parliament attack, than they ever did to help the Sikh widows of the 1984 anti-Sikh massacre, or in favor of the victims of the ethnic cleansing of the Kashmiri Hindus. These people seem to hate India more than Cristiano Ronaldo's own teammates hate him. More than the Turkish football team hates success.
There has never been a country that got humiliated as much as Turkey in World Cup history. Turkey players became the laughing stock of the entire world. When they left their country, thousands of cars escorted them to the airport. They left like Avengers. They arrived at the World Cup like NPC. Before the first game, Arda Güler confidently said, "We are better than Australia. Let's prove it from the first minute." But Turkey got humbled 2-0. In their second game, Paraguay had a player sent off for covering his mouth. Turkey played the game against 10 men, and they still couldn't score.
In any other country, you'll find a ton of people who may have a lot of problems with their country, but if an outsider attacked their country, they will always rally behind their country. But there is something so unique about India that there is a section of people in the country who will go out of their way to side with India's enemies and blatant racists. It's funny because Indian leftists who normally hate white supremacists seem to have everything in common with white supremacists when it comes to India. So let's talk about this mental disease where you go out of your way to make your own country appear in a bad light, and why this disease overwhelmingly affects Indians as compared to any other nationality.
So annoying, man.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I am the CEO of Secularism, Sham Sharma, and to all of you, a secular pranam. And look, racism on the internet, it's not anything
What a
new.
day to wear my alma mater
Racism and the internet are inseparable like peanut butter and jelly, chole and bhature, and the BCCI and Rajiv Shukla. What we are witnessing today is far more organized, deliberate, and systematic. There are entire social media accounts, pages, and online communities whose sole purpose seems to be manufacturing and amplifying derogatory stereotypes about Indians. Their job seems to be simple. If you see anything about India, attack it. If you see any negative news come out of India, massively amplify it. When RRR achieves international fame, try to attack it. When 18-year-old chess prodigy D. Gukesh defeated the world world #1 and became one of the biggest success stories in Indian chess. The comment section under the posts about his accomplishments was flooded with racist comments. And look, it's important to acknowledge that a lot of this isn't organic. We have seen how countries like Pakistan, China, and Qatar employ a very coherent disinformation campaign. We've seen how for decades Pakistan has tried to keep issues like Kashmir in the international spotlight. One of the big revelations came in 2020 when European researchers uncovered what they described as a massive influence network linked to pro-Pakistan interests. This network consisted of fake media outlets, fake NGOs, and even fake experts whose job was to amplify narratives critical of India. And then there's China. China has spent decades building one of the most sophisticated information ecosystems on the planet. State-backed media organizations promote a pro-China view in the world and attack any country that they see as adversaries with massive disinformation campaigns. According to assessments by the US State Department's Global Engagement Center, China has built a multi-layered influence apparatus that includes state media, online influencers, content sharing agreements, fake personas, and coordinated information campaigns. Billions of dollars are believed to be spent globally on these efforts. One of the most fascinating examples is something researchers call spamouflage. Imagine an account posting travel photos, cooking videos, basketball clips, and harmless entertainment content. Seems completely normal, right? And then suddenly that same account starts posting anti-India narratives. Political messaging is hidden inside what appears to be authentic online behavior. According to researchers at Graphica, Meta, and other organizations, these networks have evolved over time and become increasingly sophisticated to spread this spamouflage. And India is increasingly a target. Researchers have documented networks pushing narratives related to border disputes, social tensions, caste, language, religious divisions, and India's relationships with its partners. Before the 2024 general elections, Microsoft's Threat Analysis Center warned that China would be using AI-generated content to influence political discussions and political outcomes in countries like India. Investigations by organizations like ASPI and Doublethink Lab have also identified coordinated activity involving Chinese language networks and accounts operating in Indian languages. So clearly you have campaigns backed by entire nation states that are aimed at spreading anti-India narratives, anti-India racism, and anti-India hatred. But still, I believe that all of this would not have the impact that it does if there wasn't an army of Indians more than willing to amplify this anti-India rhetoric and in fact say much worse things about Indians than any foreigner ever could. It's your own people. It's your own that can hurt you much worse than any outside enemy ever could.
We should just throw them all across the...
Being asked will haunt me much more than any YRF spy slop or a Dharma Productions romantic comedy slop ever could. The British would not have been able to keep a hold of India if they didn't have an army of Indian soldiers doing their dirty work for them. This is something that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and Veer Savarkar understood, and then the Indian National Army recognized and exploited to ultimately free India. I'll give you a few examples. You have accounts like Tarun Gautam, who follows dozens of anti-India Pakistan affiliated handles, who deliberately spread a video of a Bangladeshi man licking a video and falsely attributed to this man being Indian. What's interesting that this person posted it shortly after an anti-India Telegram channel had shared the same video. There are other people who live in India who run multiple anti-India, anti-Hindu groups in Telegram where they morph photos of Hindu gods in the most heinous way possible. And it's not just random people. You have liberal stand-up comedians like Veer Das who go abroad and only talk about the negative stereotypes.
I can't stand Veer Das.
From an India where children in masks hold hands with each other, and yet I come from an India where leaders hug each other without masks. I come from an India where the AQI is 9,000,
Can we just stop?
We still sleep on the roof.
I can't stand him.
I come from an India where we worship women during the day and gang rape them at night.
You have the leader of the Indian opposition, Rahul Gandhi, who goes to Western countries, talks about how democracy in India has completely collapsed and begs Western countries to interfere in Indian internal affairs and topple the democratically elected Indian government.
Well, how would you react if something, a structure 3.5 times Europe suddenly went non-democratic, right? That's happened already. That's not something that is going to happen in the future. That's already happened.
Oh, really?
But there's no reaction.
You also have Indian origin activists who live in Western countries who can only find negative things about India. They will never conduct field work, they rarely engage with ground realities, and rarely acknowledge any social progress happening in India.
Partly because it renders some people as non-human in the sense that it really pushes them down the ladder. Not everybody gets equal access to opportunity. People are actually seen as superior and inferior, like if it was happening on racial terms and nationalistic terms.
Another great example of intellectuals and activists like this is one of India's biggest YouTubers, Dhruv Rathi, a true intellectual. You don't believe me? Check this out.
Highways banane par hamari sarkar almost 2 lakh crore rupees.
Stop. You know, Abhi recently announced that your passport is not your proof of citizenship. This guy doesn't even have passport. So can we just stop claiming him as Indian? Because he's not. I just I want to throw up when I see this guy and all of these people actually play.
इस आर्टिकल को देखिए, NFHS सर्वे के अनुसार सिर्फ 8% इंडियन परिवारों के पास गाड़ियां हैं। क्योंकि क्या हमें सही में जरूरत है और हाईवेज की? क्या हमें सही में डबल हाईवेज की जरूरत है, डबल एयरपोर्ट्स की जरूरत है?
Now you know that when somebody is this intelligent, their opinions about India are going to be like the diarrhea that you get after eating some really bad chole kulche at a wedding. These people never miss a chance to insult India, its culture, its development, or Hindus. They're desperate for the democratically elected leader of India to be insulted and humiliated wherever he goes just because they do not agree with his politics.
Substitute Modi for Dhruv
promoting a Gen Z style violent silent
Then I'll
revolution
agree
in
with
India,
you.
like the one that happened in Nepal. You have people pushing the worst outdated stereotypes about India to a foreign audience for foreign brownie points. You have celebrated intellectuals like Arundhati Roy saying that Kashmir has never been a part of India and that India itself is an artificial construct. You have journalists like Praful Bidwai who gleefully announced that India must give up its inalienable right to Kashmir. Immediately after the Nandi Marg massacre of 24 Indians, including women and children, Farzana Varsi wrote a scathing article criticizing Kashmiri Pandits, Kashmiri Hindus, for their own massacre. Kamal Mitra Chinoy, who is a professor from JNU, actually testified before the USCIRF on Gujarat with the sole purpose of having sanctions declared on India. Recently, a lot of Indian accounts organically started pushing back against anti-India propaganda from the Chinese and started basically roasting Chinese society and the Chinese caste system about
I saw
being
this.
just as oppressive as the Indian caste system.
Love it.
I've already showed you how China
Love it.
systematically funds and supports anti-India racism and anti-India hatred on social media. But despite that, you have Indians that are actually going out of their way to help the Chinese, not the Indians that are pushing back against Chinese propaganda. Now, you might be rightly thinking, what the hell is wrong with these people? Oh, but it gets worse. Here's the part that nobody wants to say out loud. The foreign racists who will spew the most horrible anti-India stereotypes and the most horrible anti-India racism are actually getting most of their material from Indian leftists. A white nationalist who could not trust the New York Times to tell him the correct time of day will suddenly quote that same newspaper like the Holy Scripture when it comes to India, because an Indian person or a person of Indian origin has written a horrifically misleading article about India in the New York Times. A lot of the articles and books written by Indian leftists are providing talking points for white nationalists in Western countries. In short, these Indian leftists are Clayton Bigsby.
How could this have happened? A black white supremacist.
Now, I want to give a shout out because I got this analogy from another YouTuber called The Emissary. And this was from one of the articles that he wrote. So please go check out that article. The link is in the description. And please go check out his YouTube channel. It's called The Emissary. Again, the link of that channel is in the description down here. There's an old Dave Chappelle sketch about a blind man named Clayton Bigsby. Bigsby is a black white supremacist. He doesn't know he's black because he's blind. And thus he writes books about the superiority of the white race. He leads rallies in full clan robes. And these anti-India people truly believe that if they insult India loudly enough in the right accent in front of the right people, they might finally be accepted as one of them. But he never will be. He can spend years proving he's one of the good Indians, but the fact remains that he is still an Indian. And it gets crazier because the crazy part is that this is such an anomaly. If you look at Pakistan, for instance, it is exactly the same DNA as India, same people as India. However, despite Pakistan being the epicenter of global terrorism, you will never see the Pakistani population or the Pakistani diaspora constantly attack Pakistan for being the epicenter of terrorism when it would actually make sense for them to do so. They will constantly tell you that Pakistan is great. Pakistan's a very safe country. It is kind of true. Terrorists have lived there safely for decades. But India, which has nowhere near the rap sheet that Pakistan does, gets constantly chided and attacked by its own people. So now you must be thinking, well, what the hell is the problem then? Why are they thinking like this? Why do so many Indians attack their own country and hate their own country so much? Well, to understand this problem, to understand this disease that a section of India has, we need to understand something about India, because India cannot be understood in the traditional right versus left in the Western sense. India doesn't really have a right versus left the way it's understood in Western countries. India has to be understood between those who believe in India's fundamental unity versus those who do not. Between the centripetal forces that pull India towards a civilizational core versus centrifugal forces that push India away from its core and towards its constituent parts. Basically, the civilizationalists versus the fragmentalists. The civilizationalists, or the centripetal side, believes that India's unity rests on Indian dharma, the same dharma that has bound the Indians for millennia, despite having an insanely wide variety, languages, castes, and traditions. That idea, the uniting idea of Indian dharma, has kept the country as one civilizational unit. The fragmentalists, or the centrifugal side, believe that there is nothing that unites India. India is united currently only because of the artificial boundaries created after the British left. They believe that there is no such thing as an Indian nation. They don't see India as a nation. They don't believe that India has a civilizational soul. They see India simply as a loose collection of caste and language groups that are politically united thanks to invaders from the Middle East or the West. So one side, the civilizationalists, emphasize the whole. The other side, or the fragmentalists, emphasize the parts. They despise the idea of India's civilizational unity. They believe that the only thing keeping India together as a political or cultural entity are structures and institutions established by foreign invaders. They don't believe that there is anything inherent in India that keeps it united. For them, India is inherently irredeemable because it's simply an artificial creation of the British.
I don't think there was a concept of India till perhaps the British gave it one.
Therefore, an Indian leftist or a fragmentalist despises everything Hindu and thus naturally everything Indian. A very
So
famous
much
Indian
ignorance,
revolutionary and then
man.
a spiritual guru, Sri Aurobindo, correctly
So
noted
much
that
ignorance.
Indian nationalism, whether people like it or not, is simply Sanatan Dharma. Without Sanatan Dharma, there is no Indianness. There are a few main nodes in Indian revolutionary movement in India, one being Maharashtra, one being Punjab, one being Bengal. All three of these areas understood that the Indian Dharma is the soul of Indian nationalism. Without that Dharma, there is no Indian nationalism. And so because the Indian leftist despises Indian Dharma, they naturally hate everything Indian. That is why they turn their noses up at a lotus. Despite the deep cultural, civilizational, and spiritual importance of the color orange in India, they hate the color orange. They view yoga as fascist. They view Diwali as oppressive. And because they believe that India is essentially a foreign creation and has no character of its own, they bend over backwards in order to disassociate themselves from India and associate themselves with the superior foreigner that created the idea of India. That is why Diwali is bad, but Eid is good. That is why bhajans are bad, but Qawwali is good. That is why it's important to save water during Holi, but it's good to brutally butcher millions millions of voiceless animals during Eid. It's why speaking perfect English makes you cultured, but speaking perfect Hindi makes you a backward hick. It's why Mughals are revered by the leftists, but indigenous kings and warriors who offered resistance to foreign invaders are treated as a small footnote in Indian history by the same people. This is why they will question why India hasn't taken any big strides in AI yet, but will also vehemently oppose any data centers being built. They will ask why the transportation system for India cannot be improved, while at the same time any new train line being developed will be protested on environmental grounds. And this is why, if you're not Indian, what I'm about to say will shock you. Anywhere in the world, if you consider yourself a part of the left, you will be in favor of restoring indigenous sites that were destroyed by colonial invaders. Leftists and Maoris fight to preserve Maori spiritual places. Leftists in America try to preserve and restore sacred Native American landmarks. Leftists in the UK will top statues of prominent figures in the transatlantic slave trade. However, the leftists in India fought tooth and nail for nearly 70 years to prevent Indian Hindus from rebuilding the Ram Temple. The Ram Temple, for people that might not know, is one of the most sacred sites in Indian Hinduism, which was destroyed by Islamic invaders, and a mosque built on that place to emphasize the domination of Islam over Hindu India. So essentially, if you think about it, India is the only place in the world where leftists fight in favor of the colonizers and the invaders. It's like if a mother-in-law in an Indian soap opera just gets along with her daughter-in-law all the time. That's not how it works. It's like if Gordon Ramsay tastes someone's dish and isn't a complete twat about it. That's not how this works. And so that brings me to the most incredible thing about India, is that Western white supremacists and Indian leftists are basically on the same page when it comes to India. They have a shared antipathy towards all things Indian. The Indian leftist sees Hinduism as an oppressive, casteist, irredeemable, Islamophobic force, which basically has no saving grace. The white nationalist views Hinduism as a barbaric, heathen faith that must be shattered by the cross of Christ and the one true God. Therefore, when it comes to India, it is basically impossible to distinguish between the Indian leftist and the white supremacist. Well, how do you fix this? Well, this is not something that can be fixed in a few months or even a few years. This is 70 plus years of programming that takes decades to fix, but it can be done. It can be done through another decade or two of political stability. It can be done by becoming a $10 trillion economy. Having a certain amount of money gives you a certain amount of self-confidence when you're much more confident in standing up for yourself and speaking up for yourself. It can be done by continuing to lift people out of poverty. It can be done by overhauling the education system and what is taught to children in India. But ultimately, this is a disease that is very unique to Indians. And this is why you'll see so many Indians side with white supremacists, side with rabid Islamists instead of India every time India gets attacked. And I want to ask you, what do you think is a good way to fix this problem? How do you fix something like this? Let me know in the comment section down below. Other than that, guys, I'll see you for the next episode. You can click in the description down below or here to watch our other videos, and I will see you for the next episode. And to all of you, a second.
Oh my God, this is like, it's, I was feeling like, firstly, I started feeling enraged by all the people and the different quotes that he collected from all these dumb leftists. I just, I think we should just take away their citizenship, if at all they even have a citizenship document anymore, because we don't know. Let me tell you something. As someone who has grown up outside India her whole life and, spent the majority of my life outside India, like I was saying before I watched this video, the anti-India hate is a very new phenomena. So by that very thing, we can understand that this is a fully funded and targeted and planned attack on Indians and the idea of India, because powers in the world are very, 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 very uncomfortable with India becoming a major economy and a power on the world stage. Okay, so a friend of mine was also talking to me about this last week or something, that why is there so much India hate online? And I was like, because we as a country are progressing and we are becoming a big voice on the world stage. And whenever a country that was traditionally known as third world, or not up to par with the rest of the Western civilizations, or not civilizations, countries, they weren't a threat per se. Today we are a threat to the superpower standing, and the world order, as we all know, is changing. So in that sort of, I don't know why there's this insecurity and will to dominate and all of that, but it is how geopolitics works. And as long as there are countries who are like vying for the top dog spot, there will be planned countermeasures that they take in order to suppress a rising power, or trying to suppress a rising power, which is exactly why this is happening now, because India over the past 10 years has completely changed its game and its standing in the world, which is something we all expected to happen after Modi ji became PM, because those of us who saw what he was doing in Gujarat, we were very sure that he would bring the same sort of development model and speed to the rest of the country after becoming PM from CM. So वो अब उसके effects अब दिखने बहुत शुरू हो गए हैं in the last 4-5 years, and it's a threat. It is a clear threat to countries like the US, China, of course, our neighbors who cannot stand our progress in any way, shape, or form. So all of these powers combined will try to take you down and will try to put you down, because also after Modi ji coming into power, there has been an uprise in national pride. There has been an uprise in, let's say, civilizational pride, right? We were always fed crap BS through our movies that, oh, ye backward ye hai, or ye wo hai, or ye hai. If you have the curiosity to learn about these things, you'll go and you'll read and you'll find the truth, but there, again, I keep saying this over and over, you have to be curious enough to know the truth instead of just believing whatever's fed to you at face value through whatever portal. So that's, I mean, come on. I mean, the Brits calling India or Indian this thing backward or casteism is really a bit too rich. Okay, because we all know in British society that women were not even allowed to inherit their father's properties, and they had no voting rights. I mean, have you not read your own Jane Austen novels? Have you not read your own history? You guys couldn't even vote, your women. I mean, they had to fight for their right to work. I mean, it's even there. If you're not even curious enough to go and dig into history and read the classics, go and watch Peaky Blinders. You'll see how the women had to fight for their rights. I think it came later in the seasons. All the female authors, they had to change their pen names to male names in order to even get published. A woman working was considered, in British society. So who the hell are the British and the West to lecture India? We had strong women, matriarchal societies in the South. We had queens who were ruling their kingdoms after the death of their husbands, etc., leading armies into war. I mean, what are you talking? What are you talking? You want to talk about sati? Sati was entirely voluntary practice that the women and queens adopted in order to not be taken as sex slaves by the invaders. So none of these are prevalent practices or forced practices. I mean, it just takes a little bit of curiosity for you to know the truth. And, whether the foreigners are interested in the truth of the land does not matter. But as an Indian, you have to be very curious about what your civilizational identity is and what your civilization has been about. Go and read, go and educate yourself. Like, that is the solution, like what Sham Sharma just asked, in my opinion. Because I would say there was a brief period in my 20s where I was probably, because I wasn't so deeply invested or interested or reading, that I used to just hear headlines and things and be like, yeah man, what the hell is happening? And I didn't think hard enough, and I didn't dig deep enough. So I used to buy the whole narrative. But yeah, at one point I got very curious, and I went looking for the truth. So anyway, coming back, I think that is what has changed in recent times, the civilizational pride. If you really want to know about colonialism and its after effects, please read J.S.I. Deepak's books. I think that is a brilliant starting point, especially because our school textbooks lied to us or hid the truth from us for so long, that it kind of shaped the way we perceived our own civilizational identity. So I think a book like India That Is Bharat will change your fundamentally, like the way you look at a national identity. That entire basis of yours will change, because I think it was which empire was it? Was it the Gupta Empire or I can't remember exactly, but one of the Hindu empires, jahan pe Bharat, it covered the entire area and it was referred to as Bharat. The entire region was united by a civilizational identity that was Sanatan Dharma. Whether you are from the south and you speak a different language, or whether you are from the mountains in the north and you speak a different language, you are civilizationally united through Sanatan Dharma, which is why exactly what Sham Sharma said. The people who don't like Sanatan Dharma will attack the very idea of India being a nation. So that entire concept of a nation, if you look at it through a colonial lens, which is a British lens, a Western lens, it will be divided on the basis of either language, which is how Europe is divided, or it'll be divided on the basis of some sort of like colonizers coming in and taking over an entire continent and killing the indigenous population, which is what the America is about. So they don't have a concept of a civilizational identity that is based in dharma. And you have to remove that lens from in front of your eyes and look at the national identity through our lens, through the non-colonial lens. So anyway, I highly recommend that book. I'm about to finish it. I need to get to book 2. But This is very important. And once you start seeing your country as a civilizational nation, as opposed to a linguistic thing or whatever other divisional things, then you will understand, and then you will feel the pride, and then you will know that your ancestors have given their lives to maintain this civilization, right? Every other civilization in the world was erased by invaders, whether it was a Roman, whether it was a Greek, whether it was Ottoman, it's all been erased. You're the single indigenous civilization standing in the world today, and you continue to spread your knowledge and ethos and values and all of that goodness into the world wherever you go. So I have lived that life firsthand, having been a model citizen of whichever part of the world I have lived in, while maintaining my core, which is Indian. But the only way to feel confident about yourself is to know who you are, where you come from, what your identity is, what your values are, what your ethos are, what you stand for, what you will fight for, what you will not bow down for, and that you're good at what you like to do in your life. That is the focal point of every that is the root where your confidence comes from. Always be great at what you want to do. Always know your mind, know your thoughts, know your values, and then wherever you go in the world, you will be confident about who you are, what you are, irrespective of what anyone throws in your face, right? Anyway, I will stop talking. But if you want to discuss more with me, I'm always available on Instagram. Just drop me a DM and we can discuss further, because I love topics like this, and it's the kind of like I always say, always audit what you intake in life, whether it's books, whether it's podcasts, whether it's content online, whether it's movies, anything, whether it's even people, and relationships. Always be around people who have higher thoughts, who speak of higher things, who talk about ideas, who talk about growth, who talk about innovation. Always stick to that kind of content that enriches and adds value to your life. Don't just watch brain dead, crass BS. There's enough and more of it out there online today in the world, and it's even celebrated. Don't consume that kind of BS and waste your time on it. Just, be curious and look for things that make you a higher human being. So on that note, I feel that we will, as a people, be ready to counter this anti-India hate. And I really like, for example, I was seeing Abhi, the Indian Army has created its own Indian Army fact check account on Instagram specifically. I think Twitter pe bhi kiya hoga, but sorry, X, but Instagram pe to unhone kar liya hai, because they know how much fake videos and fake these things the Pakistani army and probably even the Chinese are constantly trying to put out there with respect to Indian Army stuff and the armed forces stuff. So they have a fact checker account. If you haven't followed it, go follow it now, because कुछ भी BS ये लोग डालेंगे, और बहुत डालेंगे, और बहुत आएगा आने वाले सालों में और दिनों में और महीनों में और decades में, as we progress towards our 2047 goal of a developed Bharat. So on that note, let me know your thoughts. I have blabbed a lot. I don't know kitna lamba hoga ye video, but I have lived around the world my whole life, and I am happy to answer your questions when it comes to any experiences I have had. I have studied in a American university. What a day to wear my alma mater hoodie, hai na? This is from the University of Florida, where I graduated from. In aerospace engineering, for those who don't know. I have just finished my master's from London, and I grew up in Oman and spent most of my adult working life in Dubai. Both those countries I absolutely love and admire and respect, and probably the two places in the world where I have felt the safest after having traveled practically the whole world. And I have lived in Spain, spent a lot of my formative years there. And so, there's a lot about the way Indians are perceived and the experiences I've had that I can probably share with you. So anyway, if you want to get into any kind of discussion, I'm there on Instagram, and we can exchange thoughts there. But yeah, do help me get to my 200K goal for the channel this year. There's a lot more content I want to make, and for that, I do need your encouragement. So please do hit the subscribe button and let me know what you thought of anything I said, anything Sham Sharma said. And as Indians, let's just be ready for the hate by arming ourselves with the truth, facts, knowledge, and just civilizational pride. Yeah. Chalo, take care of yourselves, live long and prosper, and Jai Hind.